seems really artificial to say hi everybody, since I've said hi to everybody. So, just to let everyone know, this is another scriptless one, because when I write scripts, I can't resist writing pages and pages. So this will be kind of a few thoughts, and it's probably not as coherent as usual. So if I'm talking nonsense, which I sometimes do because I think faster than I talk, please let me know. So first, a tragic or wonderful announcement, depending on how popular or otherwise the series has been, is that this is my last talk, and next week is our last workshop. So that marks the end.
No!
Even the organisers love that. Actually, I'm cheering myself. But, so that's the end of our course on social movement theory. And after this, we'll be back on the streets doing more street-level activism and vegan education with the beloved gazebo. Other stuff we have lined up, though we haven't got a timeline yet, is possibly a weekend, we don't know yet, this is all vague, a weekend of women's self-defense workshop and a feminist workshop for men, or males, to attend. So there's no excuse for them not to come. And a skill share about trauma culture, how to care for each other and look after ourselves due to the trauma we face as justice activists. A few other ideas we had were kind of a DIY culture event where we do stuff like t-shirt printing, I'm a walking advertisement, zine making and stuff like that. And I was thinking what we could maybe do with that is ask people who have skills that they want to share in that kind of area to bring them along.
Are you going to explain your t-shirt?
Yeah. This says, I'm not being naive, I'm being Herbie. And the history behind that is the fact that Herbie is Herbert Marcuse, who says we should question the establishment's definition of reality and create our own reality. Thus, his revolution is both a destructive and creative process, destroying the old order, but at the same time creating a new one. So, basically, I was having a conversation with Roger, and he was saying that I was being naive because I was saying, basically I was talking about the world as the world should be, and as people should treat one another and everything. He said, you're just being naive. And I said, I'm not being naive, I'm being Herbie, as in I'm questioning their reality and trying to create my own reality. So that's what happens, and that's how my t-shirt was born. If t-shirts
We
get
can have
born.
conversations, written on our t-shirts. It's a great idea to, communicate to each other. It's like different activists can communicate different
Yeah, it's a bit like
ideas.
signing a plastic ad. We can all write stuff. Only we had better sort of ask the people what they're going to write first. But anyway, to come back to the topic, one event that we're trying to have, we don't know yet if we have the outhouse for this event, and we're still working it out. But anyway, is a talk and Q&A with Patrice Jones. Who is, do I need to explain who Patrice Jones is? She is okay with me. She is like a radical feminist and animal liberation activist, and her position is against rights, and she bases her claims making on the ethos of care. So basically Roger sent her my talk about how these things aren't antithetical, and would she like to comment on that and address us as a group? And she said yes she would, so we're working on that. That should be the week after next, and it should be our last indoor event before we get back to street activism. So it will be embarrassing to two people here, so everyone who's interested, do try and come. Okay, I'm sure, to get down to the talk properly, I'm sure everyone's conversant with the minor shitstorm on Facebook about this event, which only happened, I maintain, because we don't have any bigger shitstorms to concentrate on. But anyway, I'd like to clear up two misunderstandings that arose from that in terms of claims making. One is to do with the legal activism. We were actually talking about that, and I realised that it could sound like I'm rejecting all forms of legal action, education, etc., based on the fact that they're legal, which is not the case. As anyone will notice, I do legal activism with this group. So my claim was not supposed to be, though I put it badly, that action must be illegal to be worthwhile. I'm merely making the point that the way I see it, political campaigning does indeed try to push boundaries, but the problem I have with that, as coming from an anarchist perspective, is that it kind of doesn't question the existence of the boundaries. I'll be going into more detail about that later, but anyway, that's one thing I would like to clear up. I do legal education work myself. I'm not rejecting everything legal because it is legal. That's not even logical. The other thing is that probably anyone who knows me at all will realise that I'm probably not a great person to be giving this talk. If all those of you who know the tragic story of Murder as Usual will know that that's probably the case. But basically my own limited experience of small-scale direct action has been disastrous. But this is not a how-to course on how to do direct action. I don't know. I'm here to learn like everybody else is. I'm not setting myself up as any kind of authority on this. Quite the opposite. So just to clear that up. Which brings me to the motives I have for giving this talk. Obviously, the main inspiration I had was that when I considered myself to have joined the movement, when I thought, okay, I'm an animal rights activist, what I did was I read everything that I could find about direct action, about the ALF, about the history of our movement. And I just wanted to learn so much. And I remember when I had spent like a whole day reading and reading about the ALF, I remember being really happy and thinking, actually, a world which has people who do these things in it is not so completely terrible as I thought that it was. So basically direct action has been my inspiration throughout my being an activist. Obviously, my practical experiences have often diverged very far from that core inspiration, as I'm about to go into. My second inspiration, apart from the ALF and the 80s, is my own rather troubling career. I remember saying to a friend that one thing people think when you give a talk about something is that you are setting yourself up as being great. Actually, one of the motives I have for giving this talk is my sadness at how very ungreit I've been as an activist, because I feel like I've wasted a lot of time. For example, I can remember a lot of times when I was standing on the streets holding or helping to hold banners saying ban this, ban that, and I realised at the time I'm an anarchist and I'm holding a banner saying ban something. There is a dissonance there between what I believe and what I'm doing. And there were several things going on there. I remember thinking, I don't know, I remember thinking when I went to demos, I mean, everyone who knows me will know I used to organise shack demos. I tried to run an anti-vivisection campaign. I went to like several demos a week for quite a long time. And all that time, I would go to the demo and be so angry and so emotional and just fired up when I got there. And I would leave and be crushed by that feeling of futility. Because I would just think, I would think about the people I've known at my mum's place, at her sanctuary. It wasn't officially one then, she just took in folks, you know. And I would think, I didn't touch you today, you know. I don't know, it mattered to me. But did it matter to you, you know? And that just troubled me. And it went on troubling me all the time, you know? I think that was like a really unhappy, conflicted time for me because I was doing stuff, I was desperately busy organising stuff, and all the time I was losing my faith. So it was kind of, I was becoming this contradiction all the time, more and more. And, you know, I think having space from the movement, and I look back, most of the stuff that I was doing was pretty much pointless, you know, or at least not consistent with my values. So that is my other motive, because I feel like as an activist, I haven't really been the activist I want to be until now. Not even now, really, because I have a lot of stuff I haven't done or learned about. But that was my other motive, my own lost time. So basically, we come to one of the main strands in the workshop, which is what objections do I have to political campaigning, or legal protest, as I rather amorphously put it. Basically, first of all, obviously as an anarchist, there's the anarchist objection. I'm not interested in bans because I'm not interested in laws. And as an anarchist, I now realise that when I was doing all this campaigning, I was trying to put pressure on people to do things. And yet at the same time, I was saying to people, these people should not have the power to do things that they do. And that ceased to make sense to me. So there's the anarchist objection, basically. Don't ask people to do stuff, because that reinforces the notion that they are there to give you back stuff that they stole from you. So basically that's my perspective on that. Also, there is the zero-sum game factor, which is basically the fact that we don't... How best to put this? There aren't a lot of us. There's woefully few of us. And the task before us is gigantic. It's beyond imagining. So we are faced every day, every minute, every second with this question, which is, how do we best spend our time? Because we have to ask that question. Like, we owe it to the people we are fighting for to ask that question. We cannot ask it too many times, and that's the question that I failed to ask. Because, and that's why I'm now asking it, because activism involves choice. We do not have so many activists that we can do everything. Often people will say, well, we have to do everything. And I know the feeling. As I've probably quoted before, and probably on video before, so now everyone watching this is bored, my friend Shane saying that I suffered from the politician's fallacy. Something must be done, this is something, therefore it must be done. And that was very apt. So I just think, basically, so few of us, we need to ask, yes, we can do this, yes, this may have some impact, this may be a good thing, but is there a better thing? Basically, that's what I'm talking about. Another thing I find a bit disillusioning as I learn more about the movements globally and like the movement here in this country, I feel like we need to be more responsive to the unique conditions we're faced with. Otherwise, I think what we end up with, essentially, is, and this isn't my metaphor, I stole it, is a shadow or mirror movement, in that we are doing things because this is what activists do. And we're not stepping back and assessing, wait, this is what we have in front of us, what are we going to do? And just having nothing but our resources, our imaginations, what do we do? We're not facing ourselves with that, I think. Again, disclaimer, I'm not talking about anybody specifically, I don't know anybody specifically, I'm talking about the movement, globally. We need to be more responsive, we need to be more imaginative, we need to look at the exploitation we are fighting, and we need to fight it in the smartest way that we can. Because time runs out for people every minute of every day. So zero-sum game again, people. So, am I advocating a return to the model of direct action that was the Animal Liberation Front? Yes and no. Yes, because for reasons I'm going to go into in more detail, those people, that time, those strategies, that vision are my inspiration and remain my inspiration for being an activist at all. They are my hope. At the same time, I think it's vital that we are humble enough to look critically at ourselves before anybody else, and to look critically at the strategies we adopt. There's a lot of problems that people have identified with the ALF as it's conventionally understood to be. Obviously, I am already running overtime, so I will just kind of tick them off on my fingers. There is the disempowering fan club element. Like, I mean, I'm guilty of this. I have a t-shirt saying support the troops with somebody from the ALF on it. But anyway, the fan club element, which is basically you get the t-shirt, you cheer them on, but why are you not doing it? It's sort of, there's the assumption there, oh, we're not the ALF, we just support them. So I kind of reasoned to myself in my head that that was a cheerleader problem. Like, almost legit protest has become the cheerleaders for the ALF, because mostly people will say, oh, wouldn't it be great if we had the ALF? So I just think, well, that's odd, because we could, basically. There is also, as Patrice Jones goes into in some detail in her essay in Terrorists or Freedom Fighters, the male-dominated macho image of the ALF, separate topic entirely, more to do with gender relations in the movement. But yeah, there is that. It's off-putting. It's very militaristic, and that, obviously, from a feminist perspective, if from nothing else, should change. Another problem, which we're going to explore, I hope, in the workshop, is reliance on media. Do direct actionists need the mass media? Obviously, as an anarchist, I'm going to say no. What would be great is an independent network of autonomous, independent activist media cells. But I would argue that the target audience doesn't need to read the paper to feel the impact of what direct action does. Say everybody is liberated from a laboratory. The people who work there don't have to hear on the radio or watch on TV that it's being raided. They will know. Those are the people we're talking about. So I would say my own perspective as an utter amateur, but as an amateur with the ambition to learn, yeah, reject the media. We don't need it. A word on other movements. They also inspire my vision of what the animal rights movement could be. Because I often think fondly and proudly of the anarchist movements, in that it kind of is a direct action movement, in that direct action is essential to the principles of anarchy, and essential to the principles of anarchy is the rejection of political campaigning which attempts to influence the establishment. So that appeals to me, and it inspires me, and I feel that a blending of those perspectives could be revolutionary for both. Also, there's the radical feminist proud tradition of refusing to allow anyone, let alone male-led governments and male representatives of law enforcement, to speak for them. Because indirect action essentially is a demand for translation. Yes, a sincere demand for translation, but it's still going to be somebody else's voice. What I love about the vision I have of direct action, anarchist style, is that it's our own voices and theirs. It's not a translation. So, taking a panicked look at the time, folks. Done it again. So to round up, another thing I didn't clear up as well is that it probably seems really ironic for me to be sitting comfortably in this room, telling everybody to be direct actionists. I think what people miss when they level that accusation at workshops, and this workshop in particular, unfortunately, is that this is not being proposed as the alternative to political campaigning. This is not what I'm telling people to do instead. I'm not saying everyone stop influencing politicians and the powers that be and come here and sit in a circle and talk. That's not what workshops are about. And especially not what this workshop is about. This workshop is the medium which proposes direct action as an alternative to political campaigning, an alternative that could be. Because we could have, again, an organised, large-scale direct action movement. And my belief is that we need to have that again. So to round up, basically what this talk has been about is why I love and believe in direct action, because it changes things at the most basic level. It shakes up complacency, it confronts false definitions, it reveals the squalor and pain and violence that newspapers and wire fences and walls and alienation hide from us. And best of all, my final argument for direct action first, before anything else, is that you cannot argue with what it does, what it achieves. Because a liberation saves somebody and gives them their life back, and you can't argue with that. Somebody is able to feel the sun and run around and be loved and be free. And that is something you cannot quibble about. It's true. And that's what I like, the authenticity of autonomous direct action. It's real, and it does touch people. And like when I think about the history of the movement, it is that authenticity that strikes me about it. And that's what I want for our movement. That's what I want to develop myself and among my comrades in this movement, because people lost their liberty so that people could be free, and that liberation and that sacrifice, I feel, is the most supremely beautiful and hopeful thing our movement has ever had. And for the sake of everyone we're fighting for, we really need it back. Thanks, everybody.